Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. Luke 18, 1 through 8. Luke writes, "Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, 'In a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared about men. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, "Grant me justice against my adversary." For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, "Even though I don't fear God or care about men, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, so that she won't eventually wear me out with her coming." And the Lord said, "Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth?" Now I want to read it to you from the Message, which is another translation. The Message says, Jesus told them a story, showing that it was necessary for them to pray consistently and never quit. He said, "There was once a judge in some city who never gave God a thought and cared nothing about people. A widow in that city kept after him. She said, 'My rights are being violated. Protect me.' He never gave her the time of day, but after this went on and on, he said to himself, 'I care nothing about what God thinks, even less what people think. But because this widow won't quit badgering me, I'd better do something and see that she gets justice. Otherwise, I'm going to end up beaten black and blue by her pounding.' Then the master said, 'Do you hear what that judge, corrupt as he is saying? So what makes you think God won't step in and work justice for his chosen people who continue to cry out for help? Won't he stick up for them? I assure you he will. He will not drag his feet. But how much of that kind of persistent faith will the Son of Man find on earth when he returns?" May the Lord bless the reading of his word. I just want to have a little Bible study with you this morning, and I want to just share with you a few things, kind of verse by verse, from this passage. Let's take a look at verse 1. Luke writes, "Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up." So, what is so interesting about this first verse, guys? First of all, if you've ever read any of Jesus' parables, very few of them are ever explained. Okay, you read them and you're like, what in the heck is he talking about? Okay? And the scripture says that Jesus did it, preached in parables to teach lessons, but also to confound the wise, the people who think they're smart, and the people who think they're so intelligent and so wise. He told these parables to confound them, to give God's wisdom in place of man's wisdom. But few of Jesus' parables are ever explained. But the interesting thing about this one is, right away from the get-go, Luke says, what? He told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. So our buddy Luke says, hey guys, I'm giving it to you straight from the hip, right from the beginning, right from the get-go. So you know what this parable is all about. And I don't know what the percentage is, but I can tell you it's pretty small, the parables that are actually explained. So you got a gift here. Yeah, the percentage is pretty small. But see, this one starts off right away telling you what the meaning of this parable is. Now I want to share with you, you guys know I love to look at the original languages that the Bible's written in because, like I've said to you many times before, the Hebrew and the Greek are very expressive languages, much more so than English. English is a very concrete language. You know, we have one or two definitions for a word. Greek, Hebrew, there's numerous definitions for the various words that are used. So this word always here in the passage, he told them a parable to show them they should always pray. That word literally means in the Greek, at all times. At all times. Now, how in the world is it possible to pray at all times? Can you pray when you're sleeping? If you can, let me know how you do that. Please. Please do that. Can you pray when you're in the middle of a project and you're busy with something in school or work? It's hard, right? So what do you guys think he means? And the Apostle Paul tells us as well in several of his letters, pray. Be constantly in prayer. Pray at all times. How is that possible, guys? What do you think he really means by that? Anybody? Yes, sir. I think that's excellent, sir, yes. Always have him on your mind. Definitely. Because that'll be a lot easier to pray then, if you have him on your mind. What else? How is it possible to pray at all times? Come on. Yeah. To be in an attitude of prayer, yes. Absolutely. And I know that's contrary to our nature, because a lot of times our attitudes are very negative, are they not? Our first inclination, our first response is negativity. Our first response is frustration or anger. Or our first response is, how dare that person? But imagine what the world would be like and what our lives would be like if we would say, hey, you know, God, that really ticks me off that that person said that, but I'm going to pray for them. Because let me tell you what, if you sincerely, honestly pray for somebody who you don't like, your attitude will change. Trust me. Your attitude will change. I've had to do it. Trust me. Your attitude will change. So the Greek word here literally means pray at all times. Be in an attitude of prayer. Have God on your mind. Pray at all times. Can't pray enough. Right? Like there's a guy who's a pastor of a church. Gosh, and I can't remember the name. I think it's Willow Creek Church. It's a gigantic, like 10,000 member church outside of Chicago. His name's Bill Hybels. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him or not. But he's been around 20 years or so, and he's written a lot of good books. He wrote a book I highly recommend to you. It's about 20 years old now. It's called Too Busy Not to Pray. Did you hear that? Too Busy Not to Pray. Bill Hybels. You might want to write that down, check that out. You could probably get it real cheap on Amazon. It's about 20 years old. Great book, though. Too busy not to pray. So we got to pray at all times. And the Greek word for give up, I found this really interesting. The Greek word for give up, Luke says, Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them they should always pray and not give up. The Greek word for give up can also mean to be afraid, to become discouraged, to become weary or tired, to despair, to lose heart, to tire of, and here's my personal favorite, to become cowardly. Yikes. How about that? How about that? So if you give up, you quit praying, you quit having faith, you give up. You might also say, according to the Greek word, that you're cowardly. Does anybody here want to be called a coward? You want to be called a coward? I don't think so. Nobody here wants to be known as a coward. It can also mean to be afraid, to become discouraged, to become weary, or tired, to despair, to lose heart, to tire of. We can all relate to those words. But it can also mean to become cowardly. Like there's something about giving up and quitting that's cowardly. Yikes. Woo! Yikes. Bless you. Okay, next section. Verse 2. Then Jesus himself starts to speak. The first verse is Luke. introducing us to the parable and telling us what it's about. Verse 2, Jesus begins to speak. He said, "In a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared about men." So here's some interesting stuff I bet you don't know. In that day, in those days, judges traveled around and they held their courts in tents. They would go to the various towns, pitch their tent, and the judge would sit in the tent on his throne. Something similar like that. And he would have attendants. He would have attendants at the entrance of the tent. And you think corruption is bad today? When I say the word government, how many of you go, "Oh yeah, they're a bunch of slime balls, they're a bunch of blah, 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 Republicans, Democrats, all of them," right? A lot of people think that, right? They're all snakes, they're all cheaters, they're all liars, right? They're all money hungry, right? Okay? Well, do you think that's a new idea? Okay, this is the time of the Roman Empire. There was corruption. These judges would set their tents up, they'd have attendants out at the front of the tent, and guess what would happen? You'd come up, slip the guy 20, say, "Hey, I need the judge to hear my case." And the more money you gave, the greater the bribe that you gave. Oh boy, your case got heard before the judge. How about that? Does that sound familiar? Huh? Lobbyists going to Washington, D.C., greasing the pockets of the politicians, and then the next bill that comes up, wow, what a coincidence. That particular special interest is taken care of. How do you think that happens, guys? Like this right here. A bribe. Okay? So that's how the system worked. And that's how this judge was. So tell me, what does it tell us about the characteristics of the judge? What does it say? Yeah. He's not very fair, no doubt about that. What does it say? Corruption. What else? He feared neither God nor man. You got it. Right? That's a rough place to be. Right? That's a tough place to be. When you don't care about the things of God, and you don't really care what people think either, that's not a good place to be. Maybe that's why he was corrupt. Huh? Yes, sir. So, yeah, you got it. And I'll bet you he was a pretty wealthy guy, right? Lining his pockets with the bribes of the people. I'm sure he was. I'm sure he was living high on the hog there. And of course, my next question, do you think there's any relation to today's issues? Yes, we talked about that already. So in a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared about men. He was corrupt. He was evil. He was selfish. Like Brian said, it was all about him. And then Jesus tells us more of the story. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, "Grant me justice against my adversary." There was a widow who kept coming with the plea, "Grant me justice against my adversary." Yes, Darcy. Absolutely. You jumped ahead of me. That's okay. That's okay. It's cool. No. Yeah. No. It's good. Please. I appreciate that. Why does Jesus point out that she's a widow? Jesus just could have said, "Hey, there was this lady in the town. She came to the judge." Why do you think he points out that she's a widow? Yes, sir. To say maybe that she was poor? Yes. What else? Nobody to support her. Yes. Remember, guys, I've told you lots of times, what was the social status of women in Palestine in the first century? What was the status of women? They didn't really have a status. What were they good for? Making babies? Making dinner? The housewives? Okay. Spinning? Right. Okay. Now, she's a woman. She's already got this low social status. Okay. And women back then were completely dependent upon the men for their social status, for their support, for their way of living. Then her husband dies. He's gone. Oh my gosh. Like Darcy said, And like David said, she was probably very poor. Probably very poor. Can you think of any other struggles she might have had as a widow? Anybody? We talked about her social status. Talked about her socioeconomic status. She's probably poor. What else? What other issues might she have had as a widow? People took advantage of her? Okay. Yeah. Raising kids alone. Right. Very possible. Yeah. Yep. Probably not allowed to go many places by herself? Yes. Any other? Couldn't really do business on her own without a man, right? Okay. So she had a tough life. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yes. It would suck to be her. Yes, it probably would be. Absolutely, David. Yep. That was a tough life back then. So we kind of talked about some of this. She has a couple things working against her. She's a woman. And women were low on the social ladder. Because she was a widow, and Darcy alluded to this earlier, she probably had no money to bribe the attendants. Right? She probably could barely put food on the table. Like Chantel said, she probably couldn't afford the property she lived on. She's probably just barely squeaking by. So she doesn't have the money to come and slip to the judge and say, hey, can you hook me up? She doesn't have the money. So that's probably why she kept coming and coming and coming. And this story never tells us who the adversary was or what the issue was. Maybe it was over the land. I don't know. Maybe it was over debts that her husband owed. Who knows? We never get an explanation of that. But she didn't have the money to bribe the attendants to get the judge to hear her case. So what does she do? Does she quit? Does she give up? She says, buddy, I'm going to keep on coming. I'm going to keep on coming. Now, this is really cool. Note. I want you to note this. Where it says she kept coming, in the Greek, it's an ongoing action. It's not a once and done deal. She came and that was it. The tense that's used is called an imperfect tense, meaning that it's a repetitive action. It's an ongoing action. So she kept coming and coming and coming, just like the Energizer Bunny. I knew y'all would like that. I was trying to think of an example, and then bam, the Energizer Bunny popped in my head. She was just like the Energizer Bunny. She just kept going and going and going. He's going to hear my case, and that's how it's going to be. If I got to come bang my drum like the Energizer Bunny, that's what I'm going to do. He's going to hear me. Now check this out. I want you to notice this, guys. I want you to notice her humility. Because look, what is she asking for? Justice. Listen, she's not asking for advantage or revenge, is she? She's got an adversary right here, right? Hey, grant me justice against my adversary. She's got an adversary. She's not asking for advantage over that adversary. She's not asking for revenge against that adversary. She's asking for one thing. Justice. Fairness. That's what she's asking for. So she's humble, not greedy. She's humble, not selfish. A total opposite of this judge, who we all agree was selfish. So notice what she's asking for. Justice, not revenge or advantage, but just justice. Verses 4 and 5 tells us about the judge's response to her. She kept coming and coming and coming like the Energizer Bunny. She said, I ain't going to give up till you give me justice. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm not asking for advantage. I'm asking for justice. She didn't have the money, but she just kept coming. She kept coming. She kept coming. For some time, the judge refused. But finally, he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care about men, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, so that she won't eventually wear me out with her coming. Now, here's the cool part. Well, we're not to the cool part yet. We'll get there in a second. So the judge gives her justice for one reason. Why? What is that reason? What does the scripture tell us? Yes, sir. That's correct. Basically, so she'll shut up. Depending on the translation you read, it talks about him or her annoying him, her driving him crazy. Okay, depending on the translation that you read. She's basically driving the guy nuts. Yes. Excellent observation. Very good. Yes. Very good. Yes, so the judge gives her justice for one reason, which Brian said it earlier, for himself, because he was selfish. So if this nagging woman would just shut up and get out of my face. She's costing me money, and she's annoying the snot out of me. Now here's the cool part. This is cool. The Greek word for wear me out literally means to punch under the eye. That's what it means. That's what it means. Just like a boxer would do to wear down his opponent. You ever watch boxing? Okay, jab, 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 right? You jab with the left and you knock out with the right. Jab, jab, jab. Okay? What's the jabbing for? What is it? What am I trying to do? Wear him down. Wear him down to the point that where I wear him down. Who here has Wii boxing? Yeah, right. Okay? Wii boxing. You jab, 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 jab. You wear him down, then pow, you knock him out. Right? That's the description that Luke is using here, guys. That's the description that Jesus is using. That's the literal word. To punch under the eye. So that's what this lady's doing. Give me justice. Pow, pow, pow. That's literally what isn't that an interesting picture to paint of that? Isn't that interesting? I mean, she could probably get arrested for literally doing that, but I just think that's really interesting. So the Greek word for wear me out literally means to punch under the eye, as a boxer would do to wear down his opponent. Verse 6. I find this verse very interesting. We're talking about a corrupt judge, an unjust judge, a selfish judge. And listen, and Jesus says, and the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. What? I read this, I'm like, what? Jiga, what? Say that again? Listen to what the unjust judge says? Like, I kind of struggled with that a little bit. Okay, so why does he tell us to do that? Why doesn't Jesus say, listen therefore to what I say? Well, he does in a second. But the first thing he says is, listen to what this idiot says. Listen to what he says. Why do you think he tells us that? I have a theory I'll give you in a second, but why do you think he tells us that? Ah, yes, David. Well done. Well done. Yes, sir. That's part of why he does it. Good job, David. Why else, guys? I'm sorry, go ahead. No. That's good, Denise. That's good. Sometimes an idiot can actually say something smart or do something smart. Yes. Yes. Excellent. Yes. Right. Good. Good job. Any other reason why? Why might Jesus first say, hey, listen to what this idiot says, then you can hear what I say? See both sides of it, maybe? Okay. Why else? I'll give you my theory. Here's what I believe. I believe that Jesus is telling us that no matter who we are, remember, she's a widow. She's way low on the totem pole. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have much. She's lived a sad life. She lost her husband. She's all alone, except maybe for her kids. We don't know that she has kids, but she probably does. Okay, no matter who we are or who we are dealing with, if we are persistent in prayer and don't give up, God is telling us he's going to move on our behalf. That's what I believe he's saying here. Because even though the judge was unjust, he still made a good decision, did he not? He might have made it for selfish reasons, So that woman would just shut up and get out of my face because she's costing me money and she's driving me crazy. But he still rendered a correct, fair, just decision, correct? Right? So I believe what God is saying is, look, no matter who you are or where you come from, if you're in a situation like this and you need me to move on your behalf, be persistent in prayer. Because no matter who you're dealing with, I'm going to move in them. Even if it's for a selfish reason, I'm still going to move them on your behalf. Brian, did you have your hand up? Yes. Yeah, excellent. Excellent point, sir. Right. Sure. Good point. Good point. Yeah, don't you think all those politicians in Washington know what the right way is? Yeah, they do. I know sometimes we question it, but they do. So are you guys with me? I believe he's telling us that no matter who we are or who we're dealing with or what we're dealing with, if we're persistent in prayer and we don't give up, he's going to move on our behalf. Even if it's through a wicked person. Do you see that? Here's this righteous lady, this widow, and this wicked judge. And because she was persistent and kept coming and didn't give up, God moved upon that judge. Even though he was being selfish and he was wicked, God moved upon that judge on behalf of that woman. Do you see that? Okay. And now, Jesus says, now listen to me. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones, who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice and get it quickly. So I want you to notice the contrast, the difference that Jesus is painting here. A contrast of an unjust judge with a just God. Do you see that? An unjust judge. We just talked about an unjust judge. Now we're talking about a just God. Will God not bring about justice for his chosen ones? That's the first thing Jesus says after talking about the judge. Okay? So there's a contrast of an unjust judge and a just God. And the implication there is he can be trusted to make the right decisions for us. But the truth of the matter is, we don't think he can be. Let's be real. Right? A lot of times we give up, we quit, we lose heart. Why? Because we don't really trust him. Because when we're going through hell and he hasn't answered yet, we don't really trust him. Let's be honest. We don't really trust him. We don't really think he's going to come through. Because the experience of our lives is, well, everybody quits on me eventually. Right? Let's be honest. We all let each other down. We're human beings. We sin, we fall, we make mistakes. Okay? Eventually, I'm going to let you down, guys. I'll try my best not to, but I'm going to. I might even hurt you. Not on purpose, but I might even hurt you. I might let you down. I might disappoint you. I might say something that will offend you, and I totally didn't mean to. But because I'm a fallen creature, I'm going to make those mistakes. See, and because of our experiences in life, we think God is going to be like human beings. Don't we? Especially if we've had an earthly father who was a jerk. And you can fill in the blank with whatever expletive you want to put there. Or whatever adjective you want to put there. It's especially difficult for a lot of us if we've had a father who was a jerk. Or who wasn't there, or whatever. It's hard for us because that's our concept of father. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's our concept of father. And then we take that concept and we put it on God. Like he's a man. Like he's a man who cannot be trusted. But he can be trusted to make the right decisions for us. I just want to put that in your spirit, and I want you to remember that. He can be trusted to make the right decisions. Notice another contrast. If an unjust judge, now walk with me on this, if an unjust judge who's not like God will hear the case of a widow and a stranger, which we are not, then surely God will hear the faithful prayers of his children. Are you with me? You hear that? If an unjust judge who's not like God will hear the case of a widow and a stranger, which we are not, we're God's children, then God surely will hear the faithful prayers of his children. And that's the contrast that Jesus is painting here. And I want to just encourage you with this last part, guys. God may delay, but his answer will come. He may delay. You might not like it. It might hurt. It might be difficult. It might be a struggle. It might feel like you're going through hell. And you might be. But his answer will come. Most certainly, it doesn't probably means you're not going to be answered immediately. That's not really the way God works. Because he wants you to learn something in the process. He wants you to be stretched and made more like him. He wants you to learn lessons. He wants your faith to grow. And that's most often how he does it, is by stretching you. Understand this, though. When the answer comes, it does happen quickly. Let me say this to you. If you read about the second coming of Jesus, can anybody remember what specifically it says? Jesus will come as a blank in the night. Thank you, Brandon. Will come as a thief in the night. When a thief comes in the night, he comes quickly, he comes fast, he comes hard. And he hits you and he's out. Right? Thief ain't coming in your house, hanging out, having a cup of coffee, figuring out what he can, right? Depends on the thief. Okay. Most thieves that I am aware of, the many thieves, that's very true. Yes, that's very true. There are some dumb criminals, so maybe they might have coffee and Pop-Tarts. But most thieves come quickly, come fast, they come hard, do they not? You don't even know what's hit you. Okay? That is what the scripture says. When Jesus comes back, he's going to come like a thief in the night. Okay? Now, to our brothers and sisters who wrote this 2,000 years ago, they've been waiting a long time for him to come back, haven't they? They've been waiting a long time. But when he does come, buddy, it's going to happen fast. You're going to hear the trumpet blast from the eastern sky, and he's going to come. Boom, like that. And you're not going to know what hit you. Okay? He's going to come quickly. So he may delay in human terms. He may delay in human time. But when he comes, when the answer comes, it comes quickly. You guys ever experienced that before? Like you're praying about something, you're struggling, and you don't know what to do, and then finally there's a breakthrough, and boom, do this. And you're like, whoa, right? Anybody else ever had that happen? Yeah. When the answer comes, it comes quickly. Reminds you of Daniel. Ah, yes. Excellent point. Do you guys know that story? What is that? Daniel chapter 9, I believe it is. What Denise is referring to. Daniel, the prophet Daniel, is in captivity in Babylon, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And he is praying. And he prays this prayer. And he prays, and he prays, and he prays. The answer doesn't come for 3 weeks. You can read it, Daniel chapter 9. It's a great story. The answer doesn't come for 3 weeks. And then he's praying again. He prays 21 days. And I believe it's on the 22nd day he's praying. He's being persistent, see? 22nd day he's praying, and an angel of the Lord shows up and says, hey, as soon as you prayed, God sent me with the answer, but I had to fight my way through here, man. Okay, I had to fight against the prince of Persia. Now, does that mean he went down and literally fought with the literal prince of Persia? No, because he would have killed him. What he was talking about is a spiritual, a demonic hierarchy. A demonic order of things in the heavenly realms. So when that angel came down, he had to fight his way down through the demonic ranks. And it took him 21 days to get there. That's what she's talking about. Okay? So 21 days, I'm sure Daniel's like, dude, really? Are you kidding me? Come on. Really? And then the angel shows up all sweaty, beat up. Whew. Oh, okay. I came as soon as you prayed. I was dispatched, but had to fight my way here, man. And he even says the archangel Michael had to help me. Okay, because there's a hierarchy of angels too. The archangel Michael had to come help me out because it was rough. But I came as soon as you prayed. So maybe that's what's going on. Maybe the devil's trying to get the answer from coming to you. Right? But everything's going to happen in God's time. We don't understand his timing or purpose, but we can't lose heart. We can't lose heart. And the last verse, which I think is such an interesting question. Really, I think this is one of the most interesting questions Jesus ever asked in the entire Bible, in my opinion. However, Jesus just tells this story, 7 verses. Then he finishes. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? That is baffling to me. Will he find faith on the earth? So he closes his parable. I believe he's drawing a link between this verse and verse 1. Verse 1, he says what? Verse 1, Luke writes, Jesus told his disciples a parable to show that they should always pray and not give up. And then Jesus closes the parable, bookends. You follow me? Bookends. Okay? The first part of the bookend, Luke says, they should always pray and not give up. Then Jesus closes the other side of the parable by saying, will he find faith on the earth when he comes? There's a link between prayer and persistence and faith. Do you see that? You with me or you're not with me? Okay. He draws that link. Prayer, persistence in prayer, and faith. Okay? What do you think that link is, guys? What do you think that link is? Persistence in prayer and faith. What's the link? You believe. Okay? You believe it's going to happen, and you continue to pray. That's Hebrews 11:1, by the way. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. You might want to write this down. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You believe that it's going to happen. You have faith that it's going to happen, so you keep persistently praying. That's the link. And notice Jesus says, when the Son of Man comes. What do you think that's referring to? The second coming. He's already here on the earth talking, giving us his parable. So he can't be talking about his first coming, right? It's got to be his second coming. And when he comes the second time, you all better watch out. He's going to kick butt and take names the second time he comes. First time he came humbly as a man. Humbled himself, died on the cross. Gave up his rights as God. When he comes back, he's going to kick butt and take names. All this junk that's going on right now is going to be destroyed and wiped out. And just talk about justice. Justice is going to be done. And it's going to be done swiftly. Okay? So guys, do you think maybe that he's warning us that life will sometimes be difficult? Otherwise, why would he ask this question? Okay, he's talking about this parable, and there's this judge, and he's a wicked judge, and there's this faithful widow, and she's got a tough time, and she just keeps persistently coming and coming and coming, and finally the judge gives her the answer that she wants. He gives her justice. Okay, and Jesus says, surely God's going to take care of his people when they pray. And then he closes by saying, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? What? Do you think maybe he might be warning us that life is going to be hard? That as the time grows closer to Jesus' second coming, things are going to get rough. Huh? Do you think he might be saying that? Do you think maybe that's why he uses the parable here of a widow? She's not just some regular lady. She's a widow. Don't you think she had a painful life? Don't you think she had a difficult life? She's already low on the social status, on the social totem pole. Now her husband's died. She has no income. She has no husband. She has no identity. She got nothing. I really believe that there's a link there. That's why Jesus uses a widow in this passage. Because she's probably the lowest of the low. Or close to it. And I believe he's telling us, guys, it's going to be tough. You're going to have struggles. You might be alone physically. You might be raising 2 kids on your own. Sorry. But be faithful. Be persistent. Don't give up. I mean, I don't read anywhere in the 4 Gospels where Jesus said, "Believest thou in me, and it shall be chocolate and roses." He never says that. Or fluffy bunnies, right? He never says that. Could he be warning us that life might be difficult? Do you think? I mean, when you read this question, what do you guys think? What's your thoughts? I mean, I'm astounded by it. It almost doesn't seem to fit to me. I know we talked about this a couple months ago, Brandon, in Bible study in Tuesday night, but the guys talked about this. But this is just like such a perplexing question to me. Like, what do you guys think? What do you think he's getting at? Yes. Yeah, I agree, and that's how I feel when I couldn't say it as well as Darcy did. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like, wow, really? Like, it just kind of struck me as kind of weird. Yeah, thanks for the vote of confidence. What, Brandon? He knows how weak we are. Like what? I think that was 3 times too. He says, "Can you guys just hang with me for an hour and pray, please?" Yeah. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. There's always somebody who's got it worse. Yeah. Right. Any other thoughts on that, guys? Okay. Into practice. Yeah. Good. That's a good observation. I want to read you this quote. And I got this from www.bible.org, from an author named Hampton Heathley. He's actually the administrator of that particular website. I just wanted to give him the credit for this quote because he wrote it, I didn't. He writes, "Persistent prayer is the demonstration of faith in the character of God's attributes and the chronology of his actions." So God's character is, we talked about this already, God's character is he's just. He's righteous. Chronology, you guys don't understand what that means? Chronology is about time. Okay? So this story is really about God's character and God's timing. And how are we going to respond to it? Are we going to respond in faith and persistent prayer, or are we going to be cowards and give up? Really, that's the crux of the matter. Really. Are we going to believe in God's justice, his justness? Are we going to believe in his character? Are we going to believe in his timing? Or are we going to be cowards and shrink back? Are we going to give up? Persistent prayer is the demonstration of faith in the character of God's attributes and the chronology of his actions. And I want to leave you with this. Quotes from one of my favorite historical figures, Winston Churchill. I don't know how many of you are familiar with history or know anything about him or frankly care anything about him. Winston Churchill was the prime minister, the president in essence, of Britain during World War II. He was a brilliant man. He was a soldier in the British Army in World War I, and then he became what they call the Lord of the Admiralty, which is the Navy. He was in charge of that in between the two wars. And then he kind of became an outcast in England. Because remember, if you know anything about history, World War I was 1914 to 1918. And the continent of Europe was absolutely devastated. Like several million people had died. It was just a horrible, awful war. This trench warfare and chemical, biological weapons. Just awful, awful stuff. And he fought in the war. And understand, the people of Europe were war weary. Okay? Their economies were devastated. Their countries were devastated. Then, out of the ashes of this war, rises Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. And they come to power in 1933, 15 years after the end of World War I. And Winston Churchill is the only person, pretty much almost in the entire world, who said, keep an eye on that guy. There's something not right about that guy. Keep an eye on him. And Winston Churchill was hated in England because he was telling his people in the government, get ready for war. Do you think anybody wanted to hear that? No. He was saying to the government, we got to rearm. We got to rearm. We got to build our planes. We got to build our ships. Because, England's always been known for a great navy. We got to build more ships. We got to build more planes. We got to get ready. This guy's dangerous. And nobody wanted to listen to him. He was a prophet without honor, as the scripture talks about Jesus. What's that? I don't believe so. Yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting... I know the previous prime minister, before Churchill, met with Hitler and signed a peace pact, which Hitler never intended to follow through on. But this is what's going on, guys. 1933, Hitler and the Nazis come to power, and what do they start doing? They start killing people. They start killing anybody that disagreed with them. They start putting the Jews in concentration camps. And September 1st, 1939, they march into Poland, and World War II starts. So Churchill's going, I've been telling you guys for 6 years. Churchill was the first official in England to read the book Mein Kampf. You know what that is? That's Hitler's gospel. Hitler wrote it when he was in jail. And he told the world what he was going to do. Didn't he? And everybody thought he was crazy, which he was. Huh? Oh, I'm sure it's disturbing. But Churchill was one of the first officials in England to read Mein Kampf, and he understood that Hitler is going to do what he said he's going to do. But the powers in Europe kept appeasing him. They signed peace pacts and all, we don't want to go to war. They didn't stand up to him. And Churchill kept warning them over and over and over. And people hated him for it. And then guess what? September 1st, 1939, Germany invades Poland. 2 days later, France and Britain declare war on Germany. And World War II starts. But instead of saying, I told you so, the Prime Minister of England resigns, and guess who becomes the Prime Minister? Mr. Churchill. Now listen, I love this guy. Listen to what he says. His first speech as Prime Minister to the House of Commons, that's like our House of Representatives, the 13th of May, 1940. The war's going on almost a year now. This is his first speech as a Prime Minister. He doesn't say, I told you so. Listen to what he says. I would say to the House, as I said to those who have joined this government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. We have before us many long months of toil and struggle. You ask, what is our policy? I will say it is to wage war with all of our might, with all the strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalog of human crime. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be, for without victory there is no survival. Wouldn't you love for a politician to talk like that today? Huh? Because he stood up before his people. He stood up before his people and he said, guys, listen to that. He's not sugarcoating stuff. You listen to politicians today, they'll just stroke you. Oh man, we're $14 trillion in debt, but hey, it's all good. Go out and spend some more money. It's all good. I'll just keep stroking you. I'll just keep stroking you and making you feel better. Oh, let me rub your belly. Maybe you'll purr a little bit. Right? Come on. And what does Churchill say? Guys, I got nothing to give you but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. And the truth. I got nothing to give you but that. And it's going to be long and hard. But if we persist, if we keep pressing on, there's going to be victory. Now check this out. This second part here, and I'll be closing with this. He gives a speech to the House of Commons 1 month later, the 18th of June, 1940, following the collapse of France. Do you know what that meant? That meant England was the only country on the continent of Europe standing, not conquered by the Nazis. The Nazis invaded Poland September 1st of 1939, and they took over the whole continent by June of 1940. 10 months. Did you see that? 10 months. In 10 months, the Nazis had taken over the whole continent of Europe, except for England. They were the only country left standing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's different, though. But he did end up, Hitler did sign a peace pact with the Russians, but then he invaded them. Huh? Well, yeah. They got pretty far, and then they stopped. Yeah. But I want to leave you with this. And I'll give you a little bit of background to this quote. France has fallen. France has been conquered. England's the only country left standing. And he meets with some of his cabinet. Okay? And people in his cabinet, you know what they're saying? What do you think the people in his cabinet are saying? Come on, you guys are smart. You can figure this out. The whole continent of Europe is fallen. England is the only country left standing. So what is Winston Churchill's cabinet saying to him? Huh? Surrender? Who said surrender? Maybe we should give up. Maybe we should sign a peace pact. Oh, that worked well. The previous prime minister did it. That's worked real well, hasn't it? Now the whole continent of Europe's under the Nazi boot. His own cabinet is saying, we got to give up. There ain't no way. There ain't no way. And then he goes and he gives this speech. And he closes the speech and he says, let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. Huh? How about that? How about that? And then, about 2 months after that, the Nazis started bombing London. And they started bombing England every night for a year. Did you know that? Every night for a year. And the British Royal Air Force was outnumbered 8 to 1. Number of aircraft. The British Royal Air Force was outnumbered 8 to 1 by the German Air Force. And they beat them. They beat them. I believe because they had a leader who was persistent, who didn't give up. And he got on the radio every day and he told his people, hang in there. I know it's rough. I know it's tough. I know people died last night. People slept in the subways. Did you know that? When the air raid sirens would go off, people slept in the subways while their homes and their buildings and their businesses were destroyed by Nazi bombs. They slept in the subway. And then they came out, put the fires out, and kept on fighting. And every night, their leader would get on the radio and encourage them. Never give up. Never surrender. We're going to beat these guys. It doesn't look good, but we're going to win. And by God, they did. How about that? Huh? How about that? Let's pray, guys. Lord, I thank you so much for your grace and your mercy to us. I thank you for what you're doing in our lives. Thank you for what you're doing right now in this very moment as you're speaking to people, Father. Lord, I thank you for your precious word. I thank you for the words of Jesus that we read today about the parable of the persistent widow. That we should pray, not give up, not lose heart, and keep believing and keep exercising that faith, no matter how dark, no matter how bleak, no matter how difficult our circumstances may be. Lord, I pray that you would teach us that lesson today, because we give up far too easily. We go back to old habits far too easily. We go back to old things far too easily. We go back on the commitment and the vows we made to you far too easily because things get difficult. Lord, I pray that you mold and shape us into mighty men and women of God. Men and women of God who can be like the great figures of history, like a Winston Churchill, who stand and say, we're going to fight. We're never going to give up. We're going to keep pressing on. We're going to keep believing. Lord, make us those kind of people. Because we do understand that as times grow closer to your coming, things are going to get more difficult. Things are going to get harder. And the pressure is going to be on. Lord, we need your grace, your mercy, your power to go forward and to keep persisting. Lord, help us to be those kind of people. People like this widow in this story who don't give up no matter what's going on. They don't give up. They just keep going. They keep pressing on. They keep believing. And Lord, I pray in your time, according to your plan and according to your will, that you'll answer us and that you'll come through for us. Lord, may your kingdom come and may your will be done here in this place and in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.